Mhuri yeZimbabwe mamiriro akaita nyika yenyu pari zvino zviri kunzi kubuda kwakaita Mnangagwa akazosipotwa negeza revolution vakanga vachimuteverera pazvese zvakanga zvichiitika, asi nyaya iri kubuda pano mhuri yeZimbabwe inyaya inotyisa. Zviri kunzi mukuru uyu akaenda kunotenga maweapons, paakabuda negold rakabuda nemajetsi maviri, paakabuda iye pamwe chete nemajetsi, zviri kunzi akaenda kunotenga maweapons ekuti anga achizorwisa isusu mhuri yeZimbabwe. Saka hondo iri kurongwa hazvina kumira zvakanaka, but geza revolution inotaura kuti iyo iri ahead pazvese zvaari kuronga because iri kuziva zvese zvaari kuita. Zviri kunzi akaenda pamajetsi akaenda nawo, zviri kunzi akaenda nejeti yerimwe dhila ritori notorious anoita zvemaweapons izvozvo, kugadzira maweapons. Zviri kunzi ndo akaenda naye vakanotenga maweapons negold, vakaita madeals avakaita ikoko, ndo kwavakazodzoka vachimhara paairport, paRobert Mugabe International Airport, apo pavakasangana nevakomana vegeza revolution, because vakomana vegeza revolution vatori naye, vanotomuchengeta, vanenge vatori naye ipopa iye haazvizive. So munhu dofu ndo mamiriro zvakaita. Saka ndo mamiriro zvakaita zvinhu hazvina kugadzikana munyika yeZimbabwe. Mukuru vakaenda kunotsuka nemaweapons ekuti vazopa private army yavo. Ndofunga vakatotaurirana pavakange variko ikoko, because according mamwe masources ataura kuti vakatenge vachitonokomunicata neprivate army yavo, vanotoziva kuti ningi naningi ndiye general weprivate army. That's why takakuudzai kuti pane vamwe vanhu vakaiswa mufazi vari mumilitary. Zviri kunzi mune mamembers efazi anokwana kuita 5,000 ari muZimbabwe National Army. Saka vari kushanda vari imomo. Izvi hatisi kuziva hedu kuti paunobvuma basa rekuti fazi uri imomo muarmy unokuchizama kuda kuita sei, uda kuzama kutora nyika chii. So zvinhu zvinotinetsa isusu mhuri yeZimbabwe izvozvo, zvinotirwadza zuva nezuva kuti tifunge kuti ko alright ndokusevha nyika here. Kana wapinda muchuto uri kusevha nyika, but kana usasevhe mainterest evanhu ka tinozodzoka tovhunduka kuti ko chii chawakuita. So ndo mamiriro zvakaita zvinhu zvinomira zvakanaka, zvinhu zvinogadzikana. But tinokutenda zvikuru sei nekutira kwenyu kwamunoita pano pachivhitivhiti. Tichakusiyai makatira kubva kumakomrades edu, nekuti tine makomrades edu makuru atinenge tinawo pano, atinenge tichida kuti munge muchinzwa zvavanotaura kubva mumarevolution, mumasources akasiyana siyana. Saka tichakusiyai makatira kubva kwavari ikoko, but ndo nyaya dziripo. Mukuru vakanotenga maweapons.
But with the little that is there, it is speaking to Advocate Nelson Chamisa rejecting a proposed opposition coalition, according to the newspaper. The newspaper saying they spoke to Advocate Nelson Chamisa, and that this is what Advocate Nelson Chamisa told them. And with their heading to say that, he called it an engineered pact, a project, and then he came through with whatever it is that he has written, which I tried to connect the dot, and I said is probably doubling down, and where he said the project of dealers and crooks. But whether you agree or you do not agree, but this information or what has been put out there has opened a vote, right? And it has also opened a fault line that we cannot ignore. It's like opening a proverbial can of worms. When you open it, there's no putting it back the way it was. Because behind the rejection that Advocate Nelson Chamisa is reported to have, and also what he has, put out there, lies a bigger question. And when I was thinking about it, I'm looking at it from this perspective here. Kuti, is Advocate Nelson Chamisa taking a principled stand, or what he is doing is a strategic misstep? And I will explain what I mean, by this. Because when I'm looking at this, I then started to consider, what does this mean for us as Zimbabweans, for us as a nation that is currently wrestling with the implications of CAP 3 and the broader struggle for constitutional accountability. So, when I said probably this is the principled stand, looking at his language, or the language that is being said, kuti ndozvaataura, ndozvavakataura, to me it comes across as moral language. And as Nelson Chamisa, pastor, pastoral, almost pastoral, the language. And what he is doing is framing the aspect of leadership, or the notion of leadership, is that of stewardship, something that one has to hold, something that you hold lightly, as well as something that you relinquish when it becomes a barrier to any effort of renewal. So if you consider, Koti, that is how he meant. And if you consider that framing, the rejecting of the coalition becomes an act of integrity, on the basis of what he's saying. What he is pointing to, I want to believe. He is saying, Kuti, I cannot stand in my conscience and be absorbed into these issues of elites, or an elite bargaining, where people, right, are coming together in boardrooms, etc, and trying to form something. And he's saying, I cannot be absorbed into that. I cannot be part and parcel of that. And he is appearing as an individual who's refusing to validate alliances. That is saying that they are being staged together in boardrooms rather than an alliance that is born out of citizen agency. I want you to hear me. He is indicating that he is refusing to validate alliances, right? That are being put together, that are being staged together in boardrooms, rather than them being born out of citizen agency. And is signaling a refusal to participate in politics that treats the public as spectators rather than stakeholders. I don't know if I'm making myself clear, there. So looking at it from that angle, he's coming across as an individual who's putting, the aspect or the issues of ego aside to say, this is not about ego, but it's about protecting the soul of the opposition, because an opposition has to be born out of genuineness. So it's more or less about him saying unity without ethics is not unity. And this is why, speaking about the dealers and crooks, yesterday we were talking about issues of ethics. He seemed to be saying, if you have a coalition that is being built on expedience, that coalition cannot deliver the transformation that is needed, the transformation that is required. And if the opposition is to be credible in challenging the constitutional changes that we are facing today, the changes that touch on the very architecture of power in Zimbabwe, then that opposition must first of all establish credibility within itself. We don't want people that are not credible. We don't want people that are in there for their own benefit. That is what he's saying. And if if it is framing it like that, because we've been bent, if he's framing it like that, then it can be a principled argument. It can be. But then again, there's this other side. The one that I said is probably a strategic army step. And here's my argument. Generally, or in general, politics, ladies and gentlemen, is not about purity. Politics is about power. And power, especially in an environment like ours, a constrained environment like ours. If you're talking about building an opposition, sometimes we need a coalition of ideas, coalition building. We need to sometimes compromise and we need to coordinate. I've been reading my comments, and some people are of the notion that they're rejecting the pact, this pact here, that was at the center of the conversation that was had with the Daily News. Rejecting the pact can be read by some as isolating oneself at a very, very important moment that calls for collective strength and where collective strength is needed the most. And in the way that is, the language, the everything, there's a risk of deepening fragmentation in the opposition landscape that is already marked by splits, recalls, and contested legitimacy. These are the issues that are impacting and affecting the opposition in Zimbabwe. And this is coming at a time where we have got individuals or we've got